Throughout The Sopranos, we have seen plenty of FBI agents, from Agent San Severino, Frank Cubitoso, to Skip Lapari, and many more. But throughout The Sopranos, there seemed to be always one FBI agent that lasted right up until the series' final episode, and this is none other than Agent Dwight Harris. But the relationship between Agent Dwight Harris and Tony Soprano is unlike any of the other agents throughout the entire series, as outside of a few brief encounters at the beginning of the series that display their relationship like any other mafioso and FBI agent, such as their first encounter together in the Soprano family home, and Agent Harris's failed attempt to stake out Tony, the two can often be seen together and maintained a close-knit relationship throughout the entire series. Whether this is both Tony and Agent Harris returning favors for one another or tipping them off about potential risk. But why were Agent Harris and Tony Soprano so close? This is a closer look at the developing relationship between Tony Soprano and Agent Dwight Harris. Now, before we get started, if you're new here, be sure to click subscribe and click the bell to get notifications on all upcoming Sopranos content. Also, be sure to follow me on all my socials, such as Instagram, X, Patreon, and my other YouTube channels. All links will be linked below in the description. In the beginning of The Sopranos, the FBI and Agent Dwight Harris's goal was focused on bringing down Tony Soprano and his crime family. As throughout the series, we've seen the FBI make numerous attempts at this goal and try different ways to infiltrate the Soprano crime family. From infiltrating their way into the family by using informants such as Sal Big Pussy Bumpancero, the fiance of one of Tony's closest captains in Adriana La Cerva, and even going after construction worker Jack Massarone. Along with this, we saw the FBI try and wiretap Tony's home and fail to arrest Tony after staking out a meeting between Tony and John Sacrimoni. But throughout the series, the relationship goes through ups and downs, strengthens, and the two ultimately become close in the end, and really friends. Agent Harris was introduced to us in the 8th episode of the first season, The Legend of Tennessee Moltisanti. In this episode, we watch Agent Harris make a surprise visit to the Soprano family home thanks to a warrant. In this scene, we are witness to the affectionate side of Agent Harris, as he calmly knocks on the back door instead of kicking it down, something most agents would do. In this scene as well, Agent Harris breaks up a scuffle between Tony and Agent Grasso, and Tony's wife Carmela even shares her own thoughts about Agent Harris after the dust has settled. Towards the end of the first season, Agent Harris tries to get Tony to cooperate after the attempted assassination on him that was ultimately planned by Tony's mother Livia. But Tony undeniably declines this offer, even despite hearing the Green Grove wiretaps of his own mother Livia and his own uncle and Uncle Jr. planning his assassination. Heading into the second season, the FBI and Agent Harris are persistent on bringing down Tony. They ultimately get their chance at bringing down Tony after arresting him for stolen airline tickets that were found in his car. They also came close to bringing down Tony as well with Big Pussy after he became an informant, but this notion was squashed after Sal had gotten whacked. The pilot episode of Season 3, Mr. Ruggerio's Neighborhood, displays a heavy focus on the FBI, as we watch the FBI plant a bug in a lamp located in the basement of the Soprano home, as the basement acts as a place where Tony feels safe talking to members of his crew, as we would see this throughout the series with various different characters and crucial plot lines in the show. But ultimately, this bug goes nowhere when Meadow decides to take the lamp with her to her dorm room. After numerous failed attempts at bringing down Tony Soprano, the FBI tried different ways to infiltrate their way into the crime family. And this was the introduction of undercover FBI agent Danielle, who infiltrates her way into the life of Adriana La Cerva by pretending to be her friend. After discovering that Adriana was involved in being an accessory after the fact of murder, the FBI uses this to interrogate Adriana and unwillingly turn her against her fiancé in Christopher and become an informant in order to avoid prosecution. And with this operation, we can see that Agent Dwight Harris was still heavily involved in the undercover operation of Danielle and the other informants throughout the series. In the beginning of Season 6, we learned that Agent Harris was transferred to Pakistan to focus more on terrorism, and this would be the beginning of Agent Harris's relationship with Tony changing forever, as throughout the 6th season, the two become awfully close and provide sympathy towards one another, and we see this with the shooting of Tony. and the parasite that has infected Agent Harris, as the two share concerns about one another's health throughout the final season. Along with this, we watch Agent Harris provide Tony with retribution in return for providing any information on terrorism. Shockingly, Tony does so by providing Agent Harris with 2 Muslims from the Bing, as he gives Agent Harris their names, cell phone numbers, and details of their merchant bank. In return, Agent Harris provides Tony with the whereabouts of Phil Leotardo in the final episode of the series. In this final episode of the series, we see Agent Harris become more human than he ever has to Tony in what is their final scene together, as the two share concerns about their family life at home and the ongoing concern revolving around terrorism that traumatized the country after 9/11. Throughout the entirety of the series, Agent Harris seems to be the only FBI agent that has changed over the course of the series, as at the beginning of the series, Agent Harris is a typical antagonist against Tony that is trying to bring him down. But as the series comes to a close, Agent Harris is viewed in a more likable manner in the eyes of the audience and Tony, as over time, Agent Harris ultimately becomes an ally of Tony's. And this is all despite Harris still working for the government. And this is because Tony and Agent Harris relate to one another on a personal level. Whether this is the two sharing concerns over the current state of America following the 9/11 attacks, or what is happening with their personal lives at home, the two become so close that when Tony is shot in season 6, Harris shares his thoughts and prayers towards Tony. And in the final episode of the series, when Harris learns about the death of Phil Leotardo, he shares excitement towards Tony. It's been well documented that Agent Dwight Harris is based off the real-life FBI agent Lindley DeVecchio. DeVecchio too worked in favor of his informant Greg the Grim Reaper Scarpa by looking out for his safety. One of the main reasons for Agent Harris and Tony's relationship changing and strengthening is 9/11, as the FBI's goal at the beginning of the series was to bring down Tony Soprano and his crime family. However, as the series progresses, we watch the FBI shift their focus from organized crime to terrorism. Despite Agent Harris drifting away from organized crime, he still goes out of his way to protect Tony, even all while other organized crime colleagues are still trying to bring a case together towards Tony. And nowhere do we see this notion more than during the ongoing war that Tony has with New York, as Harris is constantly looking out for Tony and his safety by providing him with inside information on Phil Leotardo. In the end, Agent Harris was just like any other crooked cop or government worker that we have seen before. We watched how he got too close to his operation in Tony, something that we saw happen to Big Pussy with Skip Lapari in the beginning of the series. And ultimately, Agent Harris couldn't decide which team to side with, as we watched him turn his back on the government by sleeping with a colleague just to get information for Tony. What are your thoughts about the complexity of Agent Dwight Harris and his evolving relationship with Tony Soprano? Let me know down in the comment section below. For more Sopranos content, keep it locked here, right here on this channel.